Peace, y'all. What's good? Uh, Today, I want to talk a little bit about giants and how it's real as fuck, and how they be lying as fuck, and how they be kind of covering it up using other names and shit. I'm gonna break it down so it makes sense. You know what I mean? So basically, we come from beings that were bigger than us. Okay, that's depicted on fucking pyramids and structures and all over the shit, like Egypt, okay, and motherfucking Samaria, where you got the motherfucking giant carrying a lion in one hand and shit like that. You got Native American tribes that talk about that giants built those structures and giants live in mountains and all types of shit. And even scriptures biblically, they talk about Nephilim and shit like that. I'm here to kind of break down what the fuck that is. Okay? So, primordial Earth, when that shit was first conjured into physical fucking existence, okay, the beings that were here, that inhabited the motherfucking realm, it wasn't like there were mad fucking animals and insects and shit like that. Okay? Those beings, when they motherfucking transitioned, they solidified and eventually became petrified. Okay. And there was trees and shit like that, but there wasn't like bugs, animals, insects, and shit like that. Okay. Primordial Earth got hit by another planet. Okay. That jump started some type of shit. Okay, that happened here. Alright. Over time, right, shit got petrified. Shit like that. When the beings came to this realm and shit like that, they were also big in stature. Okay, some people say like 50 feet, 60 feet. They're just going off measurements that we calculate today for what we know. Okay, we know they were big as fuck. Okay, these beings, all right, ended up creating what's known as us, right? Our meat suits, right? Not our souls. And throughout time, we made it with those beings, right? Those giants. That created races they call Nephilim and shit like that. And the giants that walk the earth even now. Shit like that. Okay, so the giants that's here now, that's like whatever, less than 20 feet and shit like that. That's like newer shit over time. Okay? And there's still legends of Native American tribes where they talk about giants eat their people and fucking they kidnap their women and procreate to keep their lines going and shit like that. Okay? And there's other fucking tribes that talk about the giants that go to the mountains. Okay? And the mountains are ancient fucking tree stumps, right? That they cut down because those are part of the giants that are fucking petrified. Okay? Are giant trees too. Okay? So those trees are connected to the fucking underground. Alright? The underworld and shit. Okay? So that's where the fucking giants come up and go down. Okay? To the inner worlds and shit like that. Okay? And that's what Jack and the Beanstalk's all about. Okay? You get what I'm saying? Like the kid with the beans and then he climbs up to this realm and it's the giants. No. The giants climb up to this realm. But there is a fucking tree that connects fucking realms. Okay? And you know, like the Norse tree that connects different realms and shit like that. Okay? Physically, there's one like that on Earth that connects shit to the underground. More than just one, okay? So when people talk about the UFOs, that the mountains open and shit like that, that's what that is. Okay? That's what the fuck that is. It's a fucking direct line, a direct connection. Okay? And then tribes like the Hopi that talk about, oh, our people come from a fucking tree that they climbed up and then they got to the surface and shit like that. That's what the fuck they're talking about. Okay? And even realer than that, there's wars between people and giants and shit like that. The natives talk about that shit and other fucking other cultures around the world, not just the natives here in the Mesoamericas and the Americas and shit like that. Cultures all over, okay? And they want people to think basically that like our ancestors are lying and shit like that. All that shit's bullshit. Whatever. We came from monkeys and shit like that. So what science or scientists, not science, what scientists are going to tell you is that we come from Neanderthals and other fucking primates and like Denisovans and shit like that. Okay? Denisovan is one code word for giants. Okay? If you look at a Denisovan skull and the bones, they're bigger than a human. Okay? And scientists are basically saying that they mated with proto-humans and to create humans. That's why people have Denisovan blood. Okay? So they talk about giant fucking beings that aren't exactly human procreating with humans. Just like what the fuck we're saying. Okay? Just saying it in a different way. Alright? Denisovans are giants. And those are offspring of the fucking, what you would call fucking Nephilim. You see what I'm saying? Okay? And deeper than that, they've been covering up giant fucking findings for mad long. Alright? Especially shit like the Smithsonian. When it comes to shit like, you know, the Grand Canyon and giant bones and shit like that. And deeper than that, for fucking like 100 years, over 100, because Smithsonian been here like whatever, 120 years, a little bit more, or some shit like that. Whatever. Maybe I'm a little bit off. But for at least over 100 years, there's been scientists and researchers that go or bring their shit to the Smithsonian and then fucking like want to come back, right? And then follow up, right? On like their findings and shit like that. And that shit goes missing. It's lost. And shit like that. And there's been mad cases of that. Or people finding giant bones and shit like that. And that shit goes missing. You see what I'm saying? So, there are different bloodlines of different giants, right? The fucking, you know, the alien beings that created, they're fucking giants, alright? They're different bloodlines and shit like that, okay? And they created certain bloodlines to run shit, right? So those are the bloodlines that connect to the fucking RH negative and shit like that, okay? When you talk about the red-headed giants that they find with the Paracas skulls, and you talk about the Wandjina and the fucking Aboriginal shit, okay? The giant red-headed shit, okay, with the RH negative and the fucking, the Basque, okay? We talk about the Scythians, the White Huns, the motherfucking, the Hyksos, and all the fucking leaders from the Sumerian king. All of that, that's where the fuck they come from, alright? Those are the bloodlines that track, okay? That shit, like the Celestis and the Medicis, gotta be like that, okay? And then throughout time and shit, like, so these families, right, they fucking split up, right, to different fucking regions and shit like that, okay? And over time and shit, you know, family shit happens. Some people get kicked out of the families for whatever fucking reasons. You know what I mean? And then over time, you know, now these bloodlines fucking mix in with society and shit like that. And then over time, these families that were separated got closer through fraternities and shit like that. And then they merged and shit like that. Because bloodlines like Genghis Khan and motherfucking Alexander the Great, they never fucking went nowhere. Okay, they fucking merged and assimilated. You see what I'm saying? To come back home, because they was never separated. You see, they all come from the inner earth, all right, and then they come from mountains up, right, from the trees and shit like that. Deeper than that, the main motherfucking exit point, what they call the North Pole, which is really the South Pole because they flipped the maps, right? Because they flipped everything on us, but let's stay, right? So, the North Pole, the Black Mountain that's there, that's the original, that was the tallest fucking tree on the road. that shit, they cultivated a lot of this shit. That's what happened. And then they cataclysmed, they fucking, flooded shit. They did a lot of shit. When they brought the moon into the fucking atmosphere, okay, they fucking flooded this shit. Alright? That created a lot of the fucking, what we call now sediment, mountains and shit like that. Okay? With that, alright, came what they call now mud fossils. Okay? So the fossils we see now, those were during that time, which a lot of tribes and ancient cultures, it's like anywhere from 13,000 to 12,000 to like 10,000 years ago. Alright, that's when this event happened. Okay, we could talk about the Zulus and the two brothers. Okay, we could talk about the Anunnaki fucking story, alright, which is basically the same shit. Okay, we could talk about the natives, right? Okay, the time before the moon. Alright, there's a time before the moon. And that's what that shit was brought in for. It's a fucking spaceship, okay? Deeper than that, it's tied into Saturn and all those fucking frequencies to help with their fucking shit. Soul traps, all that shit. That shit real, alright? So, if y'all need proof on that, meditate on it, remove you on that, do what y'all have to do, okay? The details are always blurry, alright? We all have bits of truth, alright? No one has the whole fucking truth, okay? But there's things there, alright? Okay. Deeper than that, there's more than just giants. There's little people too. Alright? When they talk about the war between the blue people in Hyperborea and the little people, the blue people are the giants too. Alright? Because when you talk about the motherfucking, like, look Osiris, he green and shit, and the blue, these motherfuckers is giant. Okay? Living in a different motherfucking town with different fucking atmosphere. Okay, that's when your colors come out and shit like that, right? But they got the shit, right? They cultivated not just the land, they cultivated the atmosphere and everything, okay? This 3D motherfucking hologram that they're projecting, okay? It's easy to up the settings and shit like that, alright? That's what this whole fifth sun shit is about, all this shit, okay? It's like The Simpsons. They don't predict shit, okay? They fucking make people manifest it, basically. See what I mean? There's no predictive programming there, alright? People are basically making this shit happen, alright? Little people exist. The natives talk about little people up in mountains and shit. You know what I mean? The pygmies, as they want to call them. Alright, so giants is a scientific thing. They're going to call it Denisovan. Okay? In a religious way, they're going to call it Nephilim. In the ancestral way, they have different names, but we're going to go with giants. Okay? They were beings that were bigger than us. Okay? These are scientific facts. Okay? On top of scientific facts, these are what they call mythologies, which is our ancestors' history. It's not even a fucking lie. Okay? There's nothing to be scared of. It'll be like, it's just the truth, y'all. It's about knowing what the fuck is and what the fuck isn't, alright? So a lot of shit sounds like attacking, like, you saying the redhead is basically, because you're ginger, you're soulless, because, we come from the mummies that's redheaded and shit. Maybe. No, I'm playing. But, like, there's shit there, y'all. And it is what it is. People could take shit personal. But a lot of people are focused on this meat suit. Alright? And they're not looking at the soul, the individual. You know what I mean? And that's the fucking problem. Okay? Because you are the soul. Okay? And if you have a soul, that means you came out the womb. Alright? Because the umbilical cord is where your soul motherfucking enters this damn realm. Okay? That's why they talk about the cosmic womb and shit like that. Alright? That's why they talk about the soulless beings and shit. Those are the ones that was made in a fucking lab. Okay? Because, motherfucking, that shit wasn't working out. It wasn't working out. And then the fucking queen, right? The princess had to come and they had to bear through her motherfucking womb. Okay? You see what I'm saying? That's why some of us have the essence. Because we came through a womb originally. Okay? And it wasn't come through a womb. The lab babies, the fucking incubator babies, or the World's Fairs and shit like that. The fucking bloodlines that was meant to run shit. That's why they're soulless, alright? And then they lack empathy and shit like that. They was designed that way through the motherfucking genetics and shit like that, okay? That's why there's shit like worship genes and shit like that. But deeper than that, epigenetics, because genes don't control you. So you can unlock genes that's locked in you, like the immortal gene and shit like that. Alright, we have immortal DNA. That 120 year shit, they cut us down. Alright, and you can see it in the King's List. Alright, you can see it in the Egyptians and their shit. Because the motherfucker that they use right now, his dates, the original motherfucker that dated this shit, that everyone uses his dates for the Egyptologists and all that shit. He talked about the time before with the kings and shit, where their reigns was longer and shit like that. Right? They don't use those works. They say, oh, that's mythology, is bullshit. And then they use his other works. Right? Just picking and choosing what the fuck they want to, like, listen to. Right? But we know what it is. Alright? So there was a time before all of this shit, alright? They don't want to fucking talk about it, alright? They want you to focus on your misu. They don't want you to focus on your soul, alright? Because remember, you came through an umbilical cord, right? What happens when you fucking lucid dream or astral project, right? When you leave in your body and shit, right? What's connected to you? A motherfucking rope. Where? On your belly button. Because you're connected directly to the motherfucking Great Mother. Okay? So the umbilical cord is where the fuck you come from. Through the physical realm is how the fuck you entered. Through your motherfucking mother's womb and shit like that. Alright? That's why that shit was fucking worship. Alright? Akashi Records, Halls of Amenti. See what I mean? And then that's why they want to keep, that's why they want to keep placenta. Right? That's why they want to cut the umbilical cord right at birth. Okay? When it falls off naturally. Okay? Deeper than that, that's why they go with jabs, all types. Listen, y'all, we get attacked for so many angles, and it's honestly because we're so powerful as beings that they really fear it. You know, they know how spiritually motherfucking, like, attached we are, you know? They know what time it is that all these souls are coming down right now for this motherfucking transition and shit like that. That's why they have their guard up. That's why shit is so crazy. But, you know, ain't nothing to fear. Giants is real. And fuck these motherfuckers who destroyed this realm and attacked Tiamat, who's alive too. Alright? And I'm gonna say how I say that shit every day. I say it proudly. And for my people who's walking the path, who don't feel the same way as me, you don't have to. But it is what it is. There's one truth. Alright? And then there's bits and pieces of that. And when you speak in truth, you don't really have nothing to hide. You have nothing to fear. So it is what it is, y'all. I appreciate my light workers and star states out here doing y'all shit. Y'all doing an amazing job. I'll be scrolling through shit. I'll be seeing it. Yo, man, downloads. I'll be learning shit from y'all too, the collective. Man, what a great time to be alive in this realm at this time. What is time? Anyways, y'all, have a good motherfucking day or night, wherever you're at. Evening, afternoon. It's always good speaking to y'all. I'm out. Peace.